All right, Ruckus Makers, we're here with Mark C. Crowley, who is a recognized visionary in workplace management, engagement, and culture. When the first edition of his book, Lead from the Heart Transformational Leadership for the 21st Century, was published, get this, over a decade ago, many business leaders were slow to embrace it and misinterpreted its title as being synonymous with soft, weak, and ineffective management. Today, his pioneering philosophy on heart led leadership has launched a global movement, and Forbes magazine has called his ideas visionary and the blueprint for the future of workplace leadership. The second edition of Lead from the Heart is available, like as of today. So that is super exciting. The second edition has come out and it's updated and revised to address the needs of those managing Gen Z and millennial employees, supported by the latest global research on employee engagement. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Danny. Thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. So I'm super excited that we are now connected, and I want to start with a story where a school really missed an opportunity. They missed this huge opportunity to support you, and they acted in a way that lacked compassion. That's how you experienced it. Do you mind sharing that story for the ruckus maker listening and watching today?
No, you and I had a little conversation about this a few weeks ago when we first met, and this was a story that goes back to when my mom was dying. I was in third grade, and no one told me that my mother was dying. I knew that she was sick, but they told me that she had a ulcer, which didn't mean anything except it was the way that it was conveyed. Like, she only has an ulcer, so she's going to be fine. And so I came home from school one day and was told that my mom had died of cancer. And it was completely devastating to me. And a couple of days later, my sister came up to me, and I went to a Catholic parochial school.
Right.
And so my sister came up to me and said, "Would you like this statue?" And it was a statue about that tall. And my wife still has it, interestingly enough, all these years later, um, of the Virgin Mary. And so she said, "Would you like this?" And I'm 9 years old, and I was thinking, like, what would I do with that?
Right.
And I said, "Why do you want me to have that?" And she said, "Well, your teacher, Sister Teresa, gave that to Mom." And I said, "She came to see Mom?" And at 9 years old, I had the presence of mind, Danny, to understand that the whole time that I was going through this experience of being shuttled off to different places, different buses, going to different parents' homes, having my whole life disrupted because my mom was sick and there was no one who could take care of me. And I was so distressed about where my life was. And never did I feel the compassion from my own teacher. And
Mm.
so it just astonished me that she was going to see my mom to comfort her. And she had me in her class, and I never once felt comforted myself. And I just
Mm.
remember thinking, boy, did I need love in that moment. And I
Right.
just didn't get it. And she knew, obviously. So there could have been more compassion, more kindness. And it was just, it's a memory I'm never going to forget because of what a low hurdle it was and how badly she tripped over it.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story, and I can only imagine, how traumatic and what that loss felt like as an 8-year-old. You said in third grade. For the ruckus maker engaging with our conversation today, what could a school have done, right? You said it's a pretty low bar, but what could the school have done to express some compassion and meet you in that moment?
Without revealing that my mother was sick, just
Hmm.
demonstrating, I understand your mom's not feeling well, and I just want you to know if you need anything, I'm here for you. You know, Yeah, I mean, in those days, it was not unacceptable for a teacher to give you a hug. And
Right.
so, these days that there's from teachers in my own family have told me that that's much more of a conflict now, unfortunately. But in that era, it was totally acceptable. And that would have been something, just give you a hug. Like, you're going to be okay. I'm here for
Mm.
you. I'm here to support you. And so there were days, Danny, where I didn't get to school on time. I missed the bus because there was nobody. And I just remember feeling terrified about,
Hmm.
the strictness of the school and, being late, walking in on the class when everybody was already there. And just Mark, it's okay. Don't worry about being late. We'll catch up. It's all going to be good. Just
Right.
simple little conveyances that could have made a huge difference. Instead, I just felt terror. I felt fear about
Hmm.
going to school late and having my life disrupted. And she could
Yeah.
have made a big difference.
And we talk a lot in our leadership community too, just the intentional design, for entrance to a school building, but also how we carry ourselves, our presence, our energy as educators, and what are those messages we communicate, right? When kids do finally arrive to school, especially if they're tardy and late, and a lot of times that message is like, get your butts in class, here's the things to fear in terms of discipline, so on and so forth. But the schools that show up with love, right, and lead from the heart, say like, Mark, I'm so happy you're here today. Glad you made it. Like, we have a great day planned for you, and you're especially going to love like this thing that we're doing. It's just such a different approach, but it engages the kid, and it lowers the walls, I would think, right, that you experienced, right, coming to school and being a little bit late. So just encourage people to really think deeply about how they're greeting students as they're coming onto campus, especially those ones that are tardy. So I'd love to move us over to talking about Lead from the Heart. Congrats again for having the second edition out, which is super exciting. Um, I want to bring us back to a moment when you're talking with your publicist, and I'm going to laugh here because I remember with my latest book, Mastermind, which you can see back there, the first draft, right, when the editor got it, she told me like, this book sucks, right? Like, it's not so good,
Well,
and that's normal. The book has to go through multiple processes, and ruckus makers have heard the story, but essentially, Mark, to make a better book, I stopped writing a book. I started taking long walks with my puppy and getting out into nature. That cleared my mind, and it all came together and then flowed through my fingertips and created a book I'm very proud of. But your publicist gave you also very tough feedback, maybe even tougher than what I received from my editor. What was that feedback that you received?
so I had a long career. I had a 25-year career and actually had great success in financial services, which, Danny, is a dog eat dog kind of a world where you
Yeah.
don't bring heart into leadership. It's survival of the fittest. And so I left that environment and went to write my book. And by the time I had this meeting, um, the book was now written. And I was interested in securing a speaking agent so that I could take my work and go speak to companies and so forth. And she said, you have no platform. No one knows who you are. You've never written a book before. Nobody knows you in any social media. You need to cultivate that. You need to build that. And so I can't help you with that. I want to introduce you to someone who will help you build the strategy for your platform. So I took her on her word and secured this woman and paid her $10,000. And her job was to just lay out the plan for me. And she's a very direct woman. And she basically said to me, Danny, she goes, look, what I'm going to do for you is just tell you what to do. I'm not going to do anything for you. Right. So, okay, that's fine. Just steer me true north. So she said, I've now read your book. And I've read some of the articles that you've written on Fast Company. And I have option A for you, which you're going to hate. And I have option B, which you're probably going to want, but I hate. And she was just, spinning it this way. And I just said, just give it to me straight. And she said, and I hope I can say this with your audience, you're going to fucking fail if you continue to use the expression lead from the heart. You must never, ever use that again. She goes, use something like killer engagement. People don't want to hear about heart in business. And, I remember thinking, I actually asked her, I said, well, did you cash the check? Did you take 10 grand for this?
Yeah.
But what she
Yeah.
was trying to tell me was that I was way ahead of the culture. She didn't think the culture was ever going to catch up with this message. But what she was telling me was, you're going to suffer. You're going to have a lot of pain because when people hear the expression lead from the heart, they're just going to dismiss you summarily. They're going to think this guy doesn't get business, and worse, he's probably like a spiritualist or religious nut or whatever, but we're not going to take this guy seriously. And so the interesting thing is the book is predicated on science that validates that the heart is much more than a pump. And otherwise, I'm not using it as a metaphor. These days, you're hearing more of heart-led leadership. I'm like the only person that's saying, no, it's legitimate. It's like, it's who we are as human beings. There's something else there than just the pump. And so I knew that I had to hold on to, I had to hold on for dear life, knowing that I was going to get punched in the stomach for a really long time. And interestingly, I knew there would be a tipping point where people would go, oh my God, the guy's right. But what I didn't know at the time was that it would be a 2-year pandemic that would change people's perspectives of what people were really needing in a workplace and what kind of support they were needing. And it just basically laid out my whole thesis. So as much as I tried to convince through podcasts, I have my own podcast and articles that I've written, it was the COVID that I'm most grateful to for changing hearts and minds and consciousness.
Yeah, so that pandemic that we've all experienced and a rough experience to go through collectively sort of opened up our hearts and minds to be open potentially to your message. I don't know if you do agree with that. But why do you think after going through that experience, it resonates with people so much these days?
Well, the truth is that when I wrote the book originally 11 years ago, there was plenty of evidence that people were really unhappy at work. But we also have this, probably 100-year plus tradition of what we call traditional leadership theory, which is pay people as little as possible, squeeze as much out of them as possible. That's how we've treated workers. And if they don't do a good job, we get rid of them. There's always somebody else that I can get in your chair. And so we manage with fear and intimidation. And so I think the truth is we probably just acclimated to that. We just accepted that in a lot of reasons, a lot of cases, work is just a shitty thing to do every day. And I have to put up with it because I need to get paid. And when COVID hit, 2 things happened. One was people had 2 years to think about their lives. We had a lot of time alone, a lot of time, without having to get on a subway or a train or a car to go to work every day, and being alone and being at home. We started thinking about our lives. And I think a lot of people, as evidenced by what we call the Great Recession, where 4.5 million people are quitting every single month in America, setting records. It demonstrates that people woke up and said, you know what, I deserve more than this. I'm not going to suffer through working for somebody that treats me this way. And the other thing that happened was that when people were suddenly, sent to home to work, that was instantaneous. And so everybody was sent home. So that meant if you had a spouse and you had children, and you had a child going through, education online, well, you're a parent, you've got to make sure your kids are doing fine. And you may not have space for both of you to be working at the same time, or not enough space to keep the sound from attenuating. Moreover, it's just there were so many things going on in people's lives that we were exposed to for the first time. And if you had a boss that just called you up at 8 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to get your child dressed and fed and ready for online school and help your spouse get situated and help you get situated, and the boss is, hey, Danny, where are you on this project? I need this now. I need to, and there's no empathy for what your experience is. People were like, I can't do this anymore. So if they weren't willing to say, hey, Danny, is this a good time to talk? Because I know you got a lot going on and I want to be concerned about that. So, can we talk at 8:30? Would that be a better time? Just those kinds of little thoughtful moves. Some managers got that, but my belief is that they were already managing that way in the first place. So they didn't need to transition, But it was a hard transition for people that just said, I don't really care about what's going on in your life. I don't really care that your kid is struggling with online education. It's like none of my problem. Get me my project, Danny. And
the project's due now.
Projects due now. All I care about is the work. And just none of us want to live like that anymore.
Right. You know, at my best, when I call teammates or even principals that I'm supporting as a coach, at my best, I say, "Hey, do you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes just to check in?" Right? Like, is now basically a good time to chat. So I hear that's what you're saying, and now that what schools are back in session, right, and students are on campus, you could do the same thing when you stop by and just pop in a classroom. Hey, do you have 5 minutes? Even though it's not a phone call, but don't just barge in and think like because you're the principal or assistant principal, whatever thing you want to discuss with the teacher like is a priority over everything else that's going on in their life. So check in. Let's get practical too with the ruckus maker engaging with our conversation. And what are some other ways, right? They're hearing you talking about lead from the heart conceptually. They understand it, and you're saying there's scientific, evidence that this is the way to lead as well. Well, what are some things that they could do on campus with their staff, with their students, maybe with their parents, to demonstrate that they're leading from the heart?
So, one thing that just as you asked that question that people are asking me now, like, what would be your one solution to help all workplaces? So we'll put the schools
Mm,
aside for a second because it comes
okay,
back to this.
sure.
And, my answer is surprising. It's take a look at who's managing right now and reconfirm that they love other people, that they really truly want to help other people grow,
Yep.
thrive, be happy in their lives, get to fulfill whatever dream they have of their work. Not everybody wants to be CEO, but they might still want to learn. So what are you doing to
Hmm.
help them? And the reason that this is so important is because there are a lot of people managing other people that don't care about other people. All they are is
Right.
taskmasters. And my thesis is that feelings and emotions drive human behavior more than anything else. We think, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, and we believe them forever. So
Hmm.
we've
Hmm.
always in business said, we want to marginalize feelings. We don't really care about what feelings are. What we want to be doing is intellectually communicating with people. So we're going to hire the smartest people for management roles, and we're going to put the feelings aside. And so what I'm
Yep.
saying is it's the opposite. You can get
Right.
away with not being the smartest guy but you can't get away without making people feel safe and valued and supported and that they mattered and that you're their advocate. So going back to your question, I can tell you, I had a lot of teachers that just didn't care about anything other than getting out of there at 2:30.
Sure.
And so this, when we talk about some of the other things that we're going to talk about by the end of the conversation about schools, I have such tremendous admiration for teachers and feel that, we've allowed parents particularly to abuse them with their expectations. And and you see the numbers of students. I saw something the other day, coincidentally, that said there's 300,000 openings, teacher openings in this
Mm.
country, which tells me that's not a number you're surprised by, but it's a stunning
Hmm.
number that tells me people are like, why would I want to go into that? There's
Yep.
no love in that. And so I think it starts with saying, make sure that the school is filled with teachers that really truly care about other people. Start there, making
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
and you can encourage that if you're not demonstrating that. If teachers, if students aren't feeling it, if parents aren't feeling it, you can encourage the teacher to be more like that. But I think building the right team is the answer to your first question.
Yeah, it's always surprising. It always gets a laugh when I talk to a group of principals and I talk about that teacher who it doesn't seem like they even like kids. Like, why are they in the
Right.
building, right? Type of thing. But that it keeps going up too. So you talk about principals and then the central office. Do they really truly care? Are they compassionate and loving towards the adults, right? And that's one of the ways to, I think, solve for the shortages and the retention problems. Create a culture, create a space where people feel actually seen and heard and valued, and not a commodity, right? Like I can get a teacher who's cheaper and younger and whatever, but you create this other kind of environment where people are truly, truly valued, they're not going to want to leave, right? And so I think that's an important piece to think about. So also, Mark, for this ruckus maker, engaging with us, and they're thinking, all right, I want to lead more with the heart. I'm really excited about these ideas Mark's talking about. Maybe my team's not there yet. Maybe my supervisor or central office is not there yet. And you talked about when the book came out, it was a hard sell, right? This kind of leadership. How might they approach getting the other leaders on board with this style of leadership?
So, who are you asking specifically about? How can
Yeah,
a
sorry if it was
teacher
a convoluted question, but so let's do an example where I'm principal.
Okay.
I want to lead in a more compassionate way. I want to lead from the heart. I have 2 or 3 APs. 2 of them are warming up to the idea. One is more traditional, let's say, very smart, very logic focused, right? All about the numbers and the data, and the stuff about feelings and heart stuff. They have walls up. They're resistant to that idea. So how might you approach somebody like that to say, as a team, we need to create this kind of environment at our school?
So, the first thing I want to tell you is that the joy for me in being here, specifically with you, Danny, and
Thank
your
you.
audience, is to say that what sustained me. So when I published my book, I knew I had something really meaningful to say. And
Yeah.
even though this woman told me you're going to expect a lot of resistance, I didn't
Right.
expect quite the resistance that I was going to get, because I
Hmm.
was a very credible executive and did really great things, and was really wonderful with people, but also driving great performance. And I just thought people are going to take me seriously, and business sort of went, we're not so sure about you, sir. But education embraced it. So my book has been taught in 9 universities. It's still being taught in a top Big Ten MBA program, an entrepreneurship program at Northern Arizona University, and a PhD educational leadership program at what was formerly known Brandman University, which is now
Yeah.
UMass Global. And so I've been intimately involved with them, and it's because they saw it and said, this is what we want to be teaching our students, that just made me realize, okay, I'm just going to ride this until business catches up. So I'm saying thank you. I'm saying thank you to the educational community for seeing this. Interestingly, I just read a book. I have my own podcast, and I do a deep dive into my guests' work. And there's a Cal professor who just has a new book coming out. It's not out yet, but in it, he said that the National Research Council has discovered, this is something you probably already know, that teachers who produce the best outcomes do 2 things. Number 1, caring and supportive environment.
Yeah.
And number 2, they focus on learning and high expectations. And when I read that, I mean, it was like, this is lead from the heart. That's what this is. So
Totally.
if, Danny, if you were to go up to people who used to work for me and you'd say, you work for Mark Crowley, was that a good experience? Oh yeah, it was a great experience. So what's the one word that you would use to describe Mark Crowley? You'd go, well, it's going to be hard 100 times out of 100. But guess what? Out of 100 times, you'd probably get demanding 95. So
Hmm.
I believe that when I'm supporting people the way that I was, I made people feel safe. I made people feel appreciated. I found out what they wanted to learn. I knew about their families. I knew about their dreams. I supported them in unique ways and made people feel that I loved them and cared about them, and they wanted to work hard for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I gave them all that support, I remember just saying to them, it's like, well, there's no reason for us to be mediocre when we're like supercharged. Like when all of your needs are being met, let's do something great.
Yeah.
And so your question is, you're talking to a teacher or you're talking to an assistant principal, anybody that's not on board with caring. I think part of it is that they assume that caring means soft and I can't be an effective teacher, when in fact you need to be both. You need to be caring and demonstrate to people that you care about them. And that the reason I'm challenging you, the reason I'm holding you accountable, the reason I'm, wanting to see you do better in this class is because I care about you, because I believe in you. So this
Mhm.
combination of being caring and demanding, caring and setting high expectations is really the expectation we should have for all teachers and especially assistant principals. So if they're not there, they're missing a huge important dimension of their effectiveness.
Yeah. So even, you want a competitive advantage, a leadership edge, you want to take your school to the next level. Mark revealed the formula, which is a high sense of care, right, for the individual, plus high expectations equals great results. So appreciate you sharing that, Mark. We're going to pause here just for a second to share some sponsor messages. And after that, I would love to ask you the final three questions I ask all my guests. Learn how to successfully navigate change, shape your school's success, and empower your teams with Harvard's certificate in school management and leadership. Get online professional development that fits your schedule. Courses include leading change, leading school strategy and innovation, leading people, and leading learning. You can apply today at betterleadersbetterschools.com/Harvard. The BLBS podcast is also brought to you by TeachFX. Research shows that the more students speak in class, the more they learn and the better they perform. TeachFX has helped hundreds of schools increase their student engagement by visualizing for teachers what portions of class are teacher talk versus student talk. And you can learn more at teachfx.com. Finally, today's show is proudly sponsored by Organized Binder, a program which gives students daily exposure to goal setting, reflective learning, time and task management, study strategies, organizational skills, and more. Organized Binder's color-coded system is implemented by the teacher through parallel process with students, helping them create a predictable and dependable classroom routine. Learn more and improve your students' executive functioning at organizedbinder.com. And we're back with Mark Crowley, whose second edition of Lead from the Heart, Transformational Leadership for the 21st Century. Yes, there it is, out today, which is super exciting. Go pick up his book anywhere that books are available. And Mark, I'd love to ask you and invite you to answer the same three questions that all my guests answer. Number one would be, if you could put one message on all school marquees around the world for a single day, what would your message read?
So you tipped me off that you'd be asking this question.
I did.
And I have a rather large Twitter following. And so I went out and asked them that question. And so I have written down 7 and one that is the one that I would have picked. But they were wonderful. They were really engaged. But here they are. Number 1, be kind to that student sitting all alone. Yeah. Next, make your own adventure. Next, everyone will make a mistake today and everyone will be just fine. Throw kindness like confetti. Aren't these wonderful?
They are. That's why I'm letting you go. Normally I ask for just one, but these are great. So keep going.
You are good enough. Believe in yourself and know you're unlimited. And mine, every student matters at this school and is loved.
Brilliant. I'm going to try to find that Twitter thread and where your followers were connecting with you, retweet some of those. And then if ruckus makers see that and want to join the conversation, we certainly welcome your contribution as well. All right, Mark. Well, you're building your dream school now. And listen, there's no limitations in terms of resources. The only real limitation is actually your imagination. So how would Mark build his dream school? What would be your top 3 guiding principles?
Okay, so I'm all about people, right? So we won't talk about the buildings or the technology or the playgrounds, but the very first thing that I would do is I would start with district leaders that put students and families first, so that the students and the families are actually involved in deciding how resources are spent, so that they have a sense of, like, I'm part of this. It's not being done to me, it's being done with me. Second, hire someone awesome, truly awesome, to coach, mentor, and develop teachers to help them get mastery. In San Diego, we had a former district attorney who was made this superintendent of schools, and he treated the teachers like they were on trial. And so then he said, we're going to bring in coaches. Well, he brought in coaches, but they were with the intention of weeding out the dead weight, and we're going to get rid of all. And so immediately he put all the teachers into fear. That's not how you do it, right?
Mm-mm.
Number three, a principal who's an experienced teacher, but also great in leadership. This is the gap, is that just because you're a great teacher doesn't mean you're going to be a great leader, and just because you're a great leader doesn't mean you have the necessary background. So you need them both. But someone who builds relationships with all students, so that the principal is somebody who's accessible, not high and mighty, and you see them at graduation and first day of school. Teachers, custodians, cafeteria workers who love children and want to help them. Every single person who works on that school has to have that common denominator. And finally, and I thought of this morning, I walk every morning at 5 o'clock on the beach in the dark, and I was thinking about our conversation, and there needs to be a pay scale. Even if principals have to go out into the community, the corporations, and say, hey, give us some money to help the teachers. But there needs to be a pay scale, so that as you not grow in tenure, but grow in effectiveness, that you can grow into compensation package that matches what you would get in a workplace, in a business, that values you and says, you have mastered this. You are the kind of person that I would want to put my child in their class because I know they're going to grow, and we need to value you. We need to reward you. So compensation, in my dream, would be substantially more than we're paying teachers today.
Brilliant. And I know a ton of people will agree with that. So, Mark, we covered a lot of ground, and I really appreciate you bringing your insights and expertise to the Better Leaders, Better Schools podcast. Of everything we covered today, what's the one thing you want a ruckus maker to remember?
Love your people is really my mantra. And when I first said it, I realized, wait a minute, I'll tell you a quick story. But what I want you to know is when I first said it out loud, I was like, oh my God. I battled a heart issue for so long, and now I'm saying love your people, and I've lost them all over again. So I said, oh, in business love, it's like I was trying to add some caveat to make it worth, acceptable. And then I just realized it's love. But here's the interesting thing. Human beings thrive on positive emotions. We know that we are hardwired to thrive, to perform optimally when we are almost marinating in positive emotions. And life is hard enough that we get plenty of negative emotions in our lives. So we have to go out of our way to give other people positive emotions. So from a management standpoint or from a teacher experience. But here's the interesting thing. Barbara Fredrickson, who is a star in the positive psychology world. Many people listening to this are probably nodding their heads saying, I'm familiar with their work. So I just threw out a question. I was interviewing her for an article, and I just threw out a question at the end. And I just said, is there anything to do with emotions that would relate to the heart? And here's what she said to me. She goes, no one's ever asked anything close to that question. But what we know is when you think about positive emotions, it's like gratitude and joy and happiness and love and attention, right? All those kinds of things are positive emotions. Danny, what she said was, she now believes through her research that any positive emotion is an experience of love. So you don't have to go up to a kid and say, hey, I love you, Johnny. You just have to say, you're growing so much. I can't believe how hard you're working on this class. And boy, what a great contribution you made today in today's discussion. And mom comes into the class. Wow, I'm so pleased to have him in my class. What a joy he is. What a joy she is. Those create positive emotions. Those feelings is what allows people to thrive. And when people can thrive, they do their best work, and they also do their best work in a school classroom. So when I say love your people, I'm saying just show it to them. You don't have to say it. If you want to say it, great. But in our world today, that's probably a difficult ask. But you can show it in so many myriad ways.
Brilliant. Thanks again for being on the show.